We're now live.
Hi, I'm Rob Beatty, and I'm here with Steve Hagerty. He is a candidate for mayor of Evanston. And this is his listening lunch. We're going to have some guests from our community sharing their vision of what community means to them, or maybe talk about their organizations, and also just give them some insight on some of South Evanston and just what we're all about here. So we're hoping that Steve will get some insights here moving forward as he continues his candidacy. Now, Steve, can you just say a little bit about yourself, or just say hello to the people out there on Facebook?
Hello, people in this room. Hello, people on Facebook. Thank you, Dan, for organizing this. It's really a great opportunity to actually have a listening lunch. You know, you run for office, and we have some wonderful people in the crowd here who are running for office. We have Devon Reed, who's running for city clerk, Alex Block, who's running for 3rd Ward Alderman, Rob Beatty, who's running in the 8th Ward. I hope I didn't miss anyone else. Oh, excuse me, and Sean Jones, who's running in the 9th Ward. So, as some of these folks know, when you run for an office, people obviously want to hear from you, and you do a lot of talking. So, I feel really fortunate and grateful that today it's really more about you guys talking to me about, Evanston, and maybe what your vision is or what concerns you have in Evanston. And so it's more of you guys talking, more of me listening, and I'll obviously talk a little, but I'll try to keep it brief. I will say we moved here 17 years ago, and we moved here for Northwestern and my wife to enter a PhD program there. We live just 3 blocks from here. We were in the 3rd Ward at Main and Forest, and lived there for 3.5 years in London. The one other thing that I'll say is a real quick story. A couple of years ago, I was on a bike ride with my son. My son's 8 years old now, so at that time he was probably 6 years old. And we stopped and we were sitting at the lake, and he looked at me and he said, "Dad," "I know who's in charge of you." And that struck me a little funny. I started a business 15 years ago. As a business owner, you like to think, like, no, I'm in charge of myself, which, of course, if you are a business owner, you realize, actually, I'm not in charge of myself. I have lots of other people in charge of me. But he said, "Dad, I know who's in charge of you." I said, "Well, who's in charge of me, Gary?" He said, "Barack Obama," which I loved. "Barack Obama and Mayor Tisdall." Now, I tried to explain to my son, no. We're in charge of them, right? We elect them and put them into office. And with that, we're obviously granting them power, right, to make decisions on our behalf and everything else. But hopefully, we're electing people who are, good listeners, who are, compassionate people, who have good judgment and have good business sense and financial sense, and the right balance between all of those things. And, for 24 years, I've been working with governments across the United States after really bad things have happened, and big disasters and so forth. So I think over that time, I have developed the right suite of skills to equitably and sensibly lead the city of Evanston. And and I'm looking forward to the journey over the next couple months. So there you have it.
Thank you, Steve. Wonderful introduction there. I also wanted to mention for the mayoral race, for the mayor's race, February the 13th is going to be early voting. Also, they're going to have a primary. So with 5 or more candidates, you need a primary. So that's February the 28th. So I want to make sure we remind folks that this is for a primary. Now, if one of the candidates, or 2 of the candidates actually one of the candidates gets more than 51% of the vote, there actually won't be a need for a race to continue April the 4th. So all those other aldermanic elections, as well as the 202 and 65 elections will go on as scheduled. So just a couple dates. Remember to put on your calendar February 13th is early voting, and February the 28th will be the day to cast your ballot. All right? Vote your voice. All right, our first guest we're going to invite up is Sean Jones, or Alex Block. Come on up and join Steve
What's going on, Steve?
Hey, Alex. Good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Great.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Alex is a candidate for the 3rd Ward Aldermanic seat. And Alex, could you start by just...
I think we're good.
And Alex, you can give his mic back, and we're going to give you your own mic.
Look
How
at
about
that. Look at that. Is it on?
Yep.
All right, Alex Bach, tell us a little bit about your background just in Evanston here. I happen to know that you grew up here. Could you tell us a little bit about that and why you're running?
Yeah, I am 3rd Ward, born and raised. So I grew up on the 500 block of Michigan Avenue, Joe Block, Debbie Pavick. It's a street with a lot of apartment buildings. There's like 4 houses right in the middle there. I was one of those houses. Lincoln, Nichols, ETHS, the whole deal. And then went to school in Ohio, was working in Cincinnati for a little bit. Was working in Cincinnati for a little bit. I mentioned that I was 3rd Ward, born and raised. I think that's important. I want to make sure the mic picks that up. But then came back to Evanston because this community really pulls on your heartstrings. And there's something really special about Evanston. I feel like it made me who I am. Instilled a lot of kind of progressive values in my heart that I hold really dear. And so I want to be back here and in Southeast Evanston, which I'm biased, but I think it's the best part of Evanston.
Now, you talked about you talked about Evanston pulling your heartstrings. Are there any just pressing issues that you think about that are kind of pulling your heartstrings?
Yeah, and here's why Evanston pulls my heartstrings. Because we are a community that lives on the threshold, that teeters between city and suburb, black and white, everything else, poor, wealthy. And I think those are the issues that are also at the heart of our city, and have been at the heart of our city for almost forever. And it's a really sometimes difficult balance to strike, but it's a balance that needs to be struck because it is what makes us such a vibrant and incredible place to live. When you talk about issues specifically, I think people want to make sure they can still afford to live in Evanston. And whether that's people living on the lake in the 3rd Ward who are going to potentially receive a huge property tax hit after April 4, or people who are living further west feel like this community is slowly starting to squeeze them out. And if that continues to happen, we become like Wilmette, we become like Winnetka, and nothing against those communities, but I don't think they have the energy and vibrancy that we do. You know, so that's one issue. I think people are also really concerned about the environment in this community, and want to make sure that we can balance our progressivism and our desire to be carbon neutral and green energy with the realities of having a vibrant economy here. So, you know, those are some of the issues that I'm trying to address on. And I think at the end of the day, people want to make sure that if they call their local representative, that person picks up the phone and responds to their email. And, you know, those are some critical issues that we all have to address.
Absolutely. And what are the boundaries for folks who may be watching? I run into a lot of folks who just, they live in a ward or a precinct. They don't know where to vote. They do know where to vote, but they don't know their boundaries. What are the boundaries for the 3rd Ward?
So you're coming north from Chicago, okay, and you have the big cemetery. And it is that cemetery to Dempster, and then Chicago Avenue to the lake. Now, it's actually the train tracks to the lake. It actually sends a little past Dempster to Lake Street, but those are the general boundaries that you can think of. And I think it's a really exciting ward, and Steve, you lived in the 3rd Ward, so you know, right, that we have 2 really exciting business districts at Dempster in Chicago, Maine in Chicago. We've got the lake and some wealth along the lake. And then we have a number of apartment buildings and transient folks and new families who are maybe coming from Rogers Park or River North and want to set up shop and send their kids to Lincoln. So it's a really exciting place to live, and those boundaries are cool.
I would just say it's probably also one of the most dense wards that we have. If you think geographically, I know there's a lot of density downtown, but because of all the apartment units and so forth, I would think the density there, well, it can obviously sustain Chicago, you know, Main Street district, and then the Dempster Main Street. And then it's pretty exciting what they're trying to do with the SSA between those two and creating that corridor.
And they just put their like, not their yard signs, but their signs that they put on the streetlights, those just went up, and there's a kickoff for that corridor that's coming up next weekend, which is exciting. Yeah.
Well, Alex, we certainly appreciate you giving us some time. Is that our time? We're going to move on to our next person.
Awesome.
And thank you for your comments. Thank you for explaining to us what the Third Ward is all about, and also we loved hearing your story. And we got to give it up for Steve for listening, doing a great job of kind of being quiet. That's a...
But it in at the end. Say a couple of things.
So we're going to continue this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for chatting, and thank you for listening, Steve. I think it's really important, and I appreciate it.
We got a nice little studio audience here. And we're going to invite Mike McGinn.
Mike, all right, good to see you.
Actually, know a little bit about Mike. He's that Tai Chi teacher that you see on the lakefront, the south end of Evanston, and during the summers. So I'll save my story, but won't steal his thunder, but I'll let him tell a little bit about himself and how long he's been in Evanston.
Well, I've been in Evanston all of my life as well, and I've been over on Monroe Street since I was 10 years old. My mom moved in there, raising 4 of us on her own, and I went away and lived in Taiwan in my early 20s, and came back a few years later, and my mom was on lung cancer, and I decided to live with her and help out with that. She passed away. I've loved the neighborhood over on Monroe Street with the Rita Fellowship, and fortunate to have stayed here. My mom rented the place, and from the people right across the alley from us, the Carrolls, and they were ready to sell, and we were ready to buy, and so we've continued on there. My 12-year-old daughter sleeps in the same corner of the same bedroom that I slept in with one of my brothers way back when. So it's been a great continuity of life that I've been able to enjoy.
So living in a community like this, what has that meant to you?
Well, as I was asked to think about that, I was thinking about that on the way here. I think of community as the willingness to connect with the people and the lives around you. And one of the things that I've found very rewarding, especially in this neighborhood, is a reciprocity of that willingness to reach back. And in that sense, too, I think be there to help and be willing to be helped. And I've enjoyed both of those aspects of community. And keeping it on a very simple level that way, being able to look people in the eye as you walk past them and make some kind of meaningful connection.
One of the things I really appreciated about you and your story is that, you know, we often hear stories of folks who are lower income, who are mainly minorities, black, Latino. You're not that, and you actually had a story of, you know, where you needed some help. You had a single mom. We don't hear that all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I just I appreciate that, but the public needs to know that everybody struggles. Everybody has a hard time, and just how and what got you through that with your family. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, my mom was a deeply spiritual and committed person. She was someone that people looked to. She was a very strong person for support around neighborhood and the community. And there was a daycare that was on the first floor, and that was kind of the source of her being able to reach out to people as they came and picked up their kids. They'd often come upstairs and have dinner with us, and it would go on into the evening. And so there was a lot of community at home that way.
Excellent. And just being on the south, kind of east end of Evanston, could you talk a little bit about that and the community here and how they supported you?
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the things that I've enjoyed is the socioeconomic diversity. Sean was mentioning that, and I think it's a very, very important part of the vibrancy of this community. I'm afraid of the potential for the loss of that and the turning into Evanston of a more North Shore moment. Again, nothing against any of those communities, but part of what has been so incredible is that ability of people to be in each other's homes and be on the playgrounds with one another. I shared a playground with all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. And more than just learning to tolerate each other, understanding the value of those different experiences that add to one's life, so that there's not this stratification of the value of what makes one human and what makes one valuable in their experience. It's not a price tag, it's an experience.
Well said. Steve, do you have anything you wanted to ask Mike as we wrap up?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily ask as much as amplify, what you just said, because I agree 100%. I think there's a lot of people in Evanston that are concerned about, the changing demographics of Evanston. I mean, it is this great community because of socioeconomic diversity, racial diversity, ethnic diversity, and that's changing. I mean, we can just look at the census over the last 10 years, and we've had a decrease of 3,000 African Americans in our community. It now makes up about 18% of our population. The Hispanic or the Latino population is increasing. It's close to 10%. But there's tremendous value in having a community where you have people from all different walks of life that have the opportunity to interact with one another, again, at the park or at these other places, because then you realize we're not so different, right? And I've had, a lot of good fortune in my life. I grew up and was raised in a working class town in Massachusetts. My parents were school teachers, thanks to my parents, was able to get a good college education, and all of that. Ended up working for a really good company in Price Waterhouse for 8 years, and took a chance, like a lot of people want to do, in starting a business. And in my case, it was a business to help communities across the United States prepare for and recover from disasters. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of disasters, right? And the company has grown over the years, and as an entrepreneur, I've benefited, right, certainly from that growth. But what I've learned along the way is when I was a working class kid in Massachusetts, I always looked at people that had a lot more money and somehow thought they were different. And then as I became an adult, and I had the good fortune of having some financial success, I realized, these folks aren't any different. There's people that are jerks that don't have much money, and there's people that jerks that have a lot of money, and it cuts back and forth. And that's something that Evanston, I think, can really help people with if we continue to be this diverse community. So I'm sorry for talking a little bit too much on my listening couch here, but I just want to amplify what you're saying.
Thank you, Mike. Mike is also, I believe, are you still an instructor at Columbia College?
Yes.
Okay.
And all around.
And also teaches Tai Chi around town, especially in the summers. I've taken his classes, and boy, great teacher. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity, and good luck to you both and all.
Thank you. All All right, I'm trying to get some cues here from my stage manager to see who's next. And next on the listening couch with Steve is going to be the candidate for alderman for the 9th Ward, and that is Sean Jones.
Welcome to the 9th Ward, everyone.
And we were in a remote location before this, but he just gave it away. We're in the 9th Ward. So, Sean, how are you today?
Good, how are you, Ryan?
Doing great. Sean, just give us a little bit of your story and tell Steve what's on your mind.
Okay, well, I am not from Evanston. I didn't grow up here. I'm not one of those.
Okay, you got it.
I'm
Gotta
actually,
get off the couch.
I'm actually from the South. I was born in Kentucky. I moved from Kentucky to Atlanta when I was very early, 6 or 7 years old. I grew up in Atlanta. I went to Oberlin College in Ohio, graduated.
D3?
The Yeoman. Very historically significant. I went to work in D.C. for a little while for the U.S. Department of Labor. Then I moved back to Atlanta and went to law school. And after graduating law school, I put myself through law school at night. Because I spent all my money going to Oberlin. So I didn't want to have any debt, and I managed to get a law degree by going at night from Georgia State University. Practiced law in Atlanta for about 8 years, and then moved to Chicago, and then up to Evanston. So I moved to Evanston in 2008, right around Labor Day 2008, and I didn't know anything about Evanston. I didn't know. So I figured the best way to get to know Evanston was to go to city council meetings. So I started working for the Evanston Roundtable, covering city council meetings. Within a month or so, I moved to Evanston. And it works. You learn a lot really fast. Sitting through those hour-long meetings to 1 a.m. at that point.
Wow.
And it also introduced me to a lot of the community. It had been a dream of mine to form my own law firm to help just... When you work as a lawyer in a law firm, they can only help a certain type of person. They can only help a person who can come in with a big retainer of $10,000 to take their case. That's not the kind of law I wanted to practice. I wanted to work for and with small businesses and individuals. And Rob, you were actually my first client.
Wow.
My first solo client. So, I formed my law firm here around 2011, 2010. And I've been on Church Street ever since. So during the day, I'm a lawyer, and at night I was a reporter for the Roundtable, and that just gave me an insight here that allows me to run now.
Excellent. I didn't realize I was your first client.
Yes.
So I kind of feel good about that.
I should have put that like dollar on the wall, but I need it.
That's great. And so you're running for 9th Ward Alderman. What's on your mind?
The same issues that everyone has on their mind are on my mind. Public safety is very important. A responsible police force that continues its education to treat people with respect is very important. Affordable housing, which everyone is talking about, is very important. What can we as a city do to make sure there's affordable housing stock here in Evanston? And I do want to give a shout out here to Reba, because they do a fantastic job of actually supplying some real affordable housing in Evanston. And we need to encourage chodos like Reba and others to continue to do that, and the city can support them in various ways. And I kind of wanted to hear Steve's ideas on this, because I've got a few ideas of what we can do for affordable housing, and those involve things like micro housing. Change our zoning laws to allow smaller units. But one of my favorite not-for-profits, what they do here, is a roommate match program. So when we find a distressed property that's in pre-foreclosure, if we can match them with a roommate who can then help pay the mortgage. And also, there are a lot of possibilities with that. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on some of those ideas.
Yeah, some people have asked me about city properties as city assets, like the recycling center, and we've got a library parking lot. in other assets. And they've asked my opinion about, how do you feel about selling them and so forth. And I've told people I don't like the idea at all of selling assets, of city assets. I like less the idea of increasing, property taxes in a city where property taxes are already high. And there is a direct correlation between an increase in property tax and a decrease in the socioeconomic diversity. And in general, maybe a slight generalization, but in general, Evanston, and you can look at the statistics, race and economics, socioeconomics runs along the same line. And so I feel strongly that if we're in a situation where we make a decision to sell a city asset, we ought to take a portion of that, right, and of that sale proceed and put it into the Affordable Housing Fund. I think we need to have more of a plan in the city about how we're using our Affordable Housing Fund. Okay, right now there's a couple $1 million in it. We get it through HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Department of the United States government gives grants. Obviously, there's a lot up in the air right now. I mean, we're going to see where HUD goes, the direction of the federal government in terms of just federal grants these days. I think that there's a tremendous amount, you know this, right, Sean, of knowledge in this community, and people in this community that focus on housing. I am not a housing expert, but one of my top 3 issues, it's smart and sensible economic development, it's youth development and public safety, where you're going, and it's affordable housing. Okay, and so I think we need to tie into experts in this community in terms of how we actually use and spend the money out of our Affordable Housing Fund and have a true conversation, a strategic plan about that, as well as how we actually get money into the Affordable Housing Fund. Are there other ways that we should be thinking about that? Last thing I would just say is, I think we should also work with developers in this community and ask them, how do we get more affordable housing here? Because they may say, hey, look, there's a lot of things that we do that add additional costs, and if we had exceptions or breaks on certain things, we might be able to increase our affordable housing stock.
I actually love to hear you say that, because we do have this fund of a couple million, and not a single dollar of it has gone toward a unit of affordable housing yet. I'd love to see the city develop a real comprehensive plan and then fund it.
Great point, and it sounds like getting all the key players to the table is the first step, and hopefully that happens here in the near future. Thank you, Sean.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Good to see you.
All right, next on our listening lunch, we're going to invite up Tom Hodgman.
All right, Tom, good to see you.
I recognize Tom. We were a couple years ago at Camp Echo, family camp together, so reunited.
Rob and I had a fierce battle on the basketball court and the softball field. He's a mean pitcher. You gotta watch him.
This guy going to hurt.
Lots of fun, lots of fun. So Tom, tell us, now I have here on my list, it says Harley Clark Mansion, Lake House Gardens. Could you tell us a little bit about how you're involved with both of those?
Yeah, well, I'll get there. And, so I grew up in the 3rd Ward,
Okay.
over near Forest and Greenleaf. And went through the public schools and spent a lot of time at Camp Echo where I first met Rob. My mom was a preschool teacher here all through growing up at the School for Little Children, and my dad was an attorney but did a bunch of volunteer work. For a while I was the president of the Parks and Rec Board here in Evanston. And so they instilled an ethic of service in me through those experiences. And moved back with my family to Evanston about 6 years ago and live in the 7th Ward now, pretty close to the Harley Clark Mansion. And it's a place that I go with my family a lot, whether it's to go to the beach or just to walk through the woods there. We walk our dog down there, and it's a really special place, as I think most people who have been there know. That park complex is an impressive place. And as I watched the sort of various false starts with redeveloping Harley Clark, myself and a group of folks in town formed a nonprofit called Evanston Lake House and Gardens that is seeking to restore and repurpose the building and looking to basically have a public-private partnership with the city. And there's sort of 4 things that we want to do with the building. We want to promote environmental education, and we have a group of people we're working with there, a number of professors from North Northwestern, District 65, Lake Dance, which is a group that's doing a lot of good work in Evanston around environmental education, Alliance for the Great Lakes and others. We want to promote outdoor recreation, both on the lake and in that park space. And we want to have an event space there, which will drive revenue to support the building and also bring some economic activity into Evanston.